Now see it, person to person, a weekly document for television, as told by the faces and voices of people in the news.
This is the videotape portion in the deposition of Bob Gebo. My name is John Funfar. I'm the videographer from Pro Video Productions, located at 80 South Washington, Suite 200 in Seattle, Washington, 98104. This deposition is being recorded this 23rd day of August, 1999. The time is approximately 2:15 p.m., and we are at 900 4th Avenue, Suite 1002 in Seattle, Washington. This deposition is being recorded in the matter of the State of Washington versus Earl M. Davis, Case number 99-1-03257-4 SEA in King County Superior Court and was noticed by Marilyn Brenneman. Counsel and all present may identify themselves for the record and the witness may be sworn in.
My name is Marilyn Brenneman. I'm a senior deputy prosecuting attorney and prosecutor along with Pat Sainsbury, who is to my left on this case.
My name is Patrick Sainsbury. I'm the Chief Deputy of the Fraud Division for the King County Prosecuting Attorney's Office, co-counsel for the state.
My name is Tony Savage. I'm the attorney for the defendant, Earl Davis.
Would you raise your right hand for me? Do you solemnly swear the testimony about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Before we begin, do I understand that all objections, except as to the form of the question or the responsiveness of the answer, will be unstated now but reserved for the trial court?
That's my understanding. Even obviously as to forms or that objection can be made, the attorney then on notice to reform the question if they wish to, but the ultimate decision will be made later.
Yes.
Please state your name and spell your name.
Robert Gebo, G-E-B-O.
What's your current business address, Mr. Gebo?
900 4th Avenue, Suite 2000, Seattle, Washington, 98164.
And what is your current employment?
I'm a investigator analyst for the Washington State Attorney General's Office.
And how long have you had that job?
I began working there January the 7th of 1999.
Prior to your employment with the Attorney General's Office, in that capacity, were you employed elsewhere?
Yes, I was employed by the Seattle Police Department.
With regard to your current duties and assignments at the Attorney General's Office, what are those duties?
I'm in charge of a nationwide federally funded training program regarding a research project that the office did from 1993-97 on child abduction and murder cases. My portion of the grant is to provide the results of the research to all 50 states, police officers, first-line supervisors, and homicide detectives.
And is the travel involved in that?
Yes, I travel all around the country.
This trial is currently scheduled to begin on September the 9th and last for approximately a week after that date, or perhaps slightly longer or slightly less. Do you have any are you unavailable during that time period?
Yes, I'm obligated to attend a conference in Barrie, Ontario, which is north of Toronto. I belong to an international organization of similar analysts to myself, and we have a international conference in, I think it's called the Cromfeld Center in Barrie, Ontario.
And is it that duty that makes you unavailable for this trial?
Yes.
With regard to your previous employment with the Seattle Police Department, how long was that?
About 28 and a half years.
And briefly, could you go through what kinds of assignments you had during your tenure with the police department?
For the first 5 years, I was a patrol officer, worked the various patrol shifts. All of my patrol time was in the North Precinct, which at that time was the Wallingford Precinct. Then I was promoted to detective, and that started in 1970. In 1975, I was promoted to detective and worked for the next 5 years as a fraud and embezzlement detective, and was an explosive disposal person for the city. In 1980, I was transferred to the homicide unit, where I stayed until January of 1996, when I was promoted to sergeant. Then I served the time that I was a sergeant. From 96 to April of 98, I was in the internal investigations section. In April of 98, I was transferred to the training section, where I was in charge of in-service training, advanced training for our officers. And then this opportunity came along, and I left the department. I actually technically left, my last working day was the 4th of March, but from the 7th of January to the 4th of March, I used my accrued annual leave to begin working on this project.
Okay. With with regard to the time you were assigned to homicide, did you receive any special training to equip you to deal with the responsibility of being a homicide detective?
Yes, I attended 2-week school initially in 1981 at the Southern Police Institute in Louisville, Kentucky on death investigation. I attended several other in-service training programs, some sponsored by the FBI, some sponsored by other agencies. In 1986, I was a recipient of a 1-year fellowship with the FBI Behavioral Science Unit at Quantico, and spent that year in study and research at the FBI Academy.
With regard to your time you were in the homicide unit of the Seattle Police Department, did you come into contact with Don Cameron?
Yes, Don Cameron was my first supervisor in the homicide unit, and actually he had been a patrol supervisor of mine, I think about 1974, for about a year.
And how long did you remain with Don Cameron as your supervisor?
From 1980 to, I believe, about 1994, 95.
What was your relationship with Don?
Very good friend. I highly respected his leadership. He was my leader.
At any time during the time that you were in the squad, did you have any disputes with him?
No.
During that same time frame, did you come to know Sonny Davis?
Yes, I did.
And what was your relationship with Mr. Davis, or Detective Davis, excuse me?
He came in our squad as a detective in the later 80s, a little bit after I was assigned there, and the exact date I don't know, but it was always a good professional relationship, friendly. I had no disputes with him, no difficulties whatsoever. Worked on cases with him and around him, got along well with him.
Do you know Floyd Stiger?
Yes, I do.
And how did you first meet Detective Stiger?
I think shortly after he was made a detective in the Special Assault Unit that does sex crimes investigations. He attended a class I taught, and a relationship developed between us where he was very interested in the kind of work I did, and I think he was interested in becoming a violent crime investigator and developing a higher expertise, and so I offered to provide him as much help as I could.
And did he ever work in the squad when you were there?
No.
Going back to Detective Davis, what was the overlap? I mean, how many years did the two of you work together in the homicide squad?
Well, it could well be that he arrived at almost the same time I did. I moved in there in November of 1980. He could have been there right about the very same time, or he could have arrived shortly after that. But for the most part, he was there almost all the time I was there.
During the time that you were in the unit, did you hear Detective Davis express any financial concerns?
Yes.
Do you remember about when that would have been?
No, I don't know dates. It would have been before I was promoted. There was a time when I know that in 1986, when I went back east, he was married and had a home in North Bend. I was actually in his home. And sometime after, or while I was gone, I believe, that relationship broke up. And after that period of time, until the time that I left the unit, I remember several occurrences where he was talking about money that was owed the IRS, about the sale of that home, and taxes being owed by both he and his ex-wife on the sale of that home, and how he could work around paying it off and didn't have any money, and I thought very serious concerns.
Did he tell to you about his ability to pay the taxes on the house?
He indicated to me that he didn't have the ability to pay.
Did he discuss with you his ex-wife Jamie's ability to pay?
He told me that she didn't have the ability to pay either, that the money was gone.
And did he ever express to you any belief that he resolved the situation?
There were various times when he talked about things like deferred compensation programs and loans and things like that over coffee. None of them, I mean, I would offer friendly suggestions, but I was not his financial advisor and I couldn't compel him to do anything about it. My primary mission to talking to him was that, these are serious matters and it's not going to go away. We need to deal with them. But it didn't ever seem to get resolved.
When you were in Sergeant Cameron's squad, could you tell me what role he would typically take in gathering evidence, particularly documentary evidence, if any?
Object to the following question. Who are you referring to, Cameron or Davis?
Thank you. When you were in Sergeant Cameron's squad, did you tell me what role did Sergeant Cameron typically take in gathering evidence, particularly documentary evidence, if any?
Not very much of a role. His primary role was to be the supervisor. So he would oversee, he had 3 squads of 2 people, or 3 working units of 2 people each, and another person that were all conducting investigations, and so primarily he was overseeing what they were doing.
As a sergeant, is there any concern about getting involved in the chain of custody with that kind of evidence?
Well, it depends upon the circumstances. There are times when, because of the circumstances, there isn't anybody else. And Sergeant Cameron has gone along with me on cases when, because of work rotation or days off or whatever, assumed the role of subordinate detective, and I was the lead. But in my mind, I knew very well he's the lead, he's my boss, but there wasn't anybody else, so he was there to assist.
Is that unusual or typical?
Oh, no, that's very unusual, but it had to be done because there wasn't anybody else to do it.
Okay, let's take those times that you're aware of when something very routine was required and someone needed to be sent back to an already processed crime scene. Would it be usual or unusual for Sergeant Cameron to go?
It would be unusual.
Okay. Could you describe to me how Sergeant Cameron got along with Sergeant Cynthia Tallman?
He didn't get along with her at all.
And how often would he be willing to help her or her squad in your experience?
Well, never is a pretty strong word, but he would do it very reluctantly if he ever had to.
Where are the cameras the squads use to process an evidence scene? Where are those kept?
Each squad has a fairly large, like a sample case that a traveling salesperson would carry, in which they maintain their 35mm camera and a Polaroid camera, the film, the scope, the things that are measuring devices and that sort of thing. And it's kept, each squad keeps their own in their squad work area.
Okay. How many squads are there throughout this department?
3.
And graduates have their own squads too?
Yes.
How do those cameras that you just described, how do they get to the crime scene?
The detective that needs it takes it with him to wherever it is and then takes pictures.
I'm going to draw your attention to mid-1997, May or early July. You've indicated that you had a relationship with Detective Stiger. Did you have contact with him approximately during that time frame about the Beauregard Mutual case?
Yes, but I had no idea what the name of this case was at the time that I had contacted him. In 1996, I was moved to a different work unit, which is physically not even in public safety building. It's in the Dexter Horton building. I kind of kept loose contact with friends and that sort of thing, but the day-to-day contact was something that I missed, but I wasn't able to keep it up because I wasn't physically there.
observations about his state of mind based on what he talked to you about meeting with you?
Well, he seemed very sincere on the phone, and he told me it was important. I believe it was, and suggested that we meet right away.
And how long do you think it was before you actually met with him?
20 minutes.
Okay. And what occurred when you met with him?
I met him in a coffee shop of the Detective Stiger building, as I recall, and there was the usual preliminary pleasantry, hi, how are you? But he obviously had something he wanted to talk about, and it wasn't the weather or how I like my new job assignment or anything like that. So I waited for him to talk about it, and the first things that he said were, well, you probably heard all about this thing about the money and Sunday.
And did you give the Detective Stiger any advice about what he could do in terms of reporting the incident if he chose to?
I asked him if he wanted to report the incident, and he told me he did not.
And when you say report, what did you mean by that?
Well, he knew very well where I worked. I worked in the internal investigation section, and that was something that we would normally have handled as an investigation. And the normal course of affairs would be to report that and move forward with whatever would have to happen at that.
And when he indicated to you that he did not wish to report it, what was your response?
Well, I didn't have a whole lot of choice, and I can't compel him. I couldn't, at least I didn't feel like I could compel him to do anything. He came to me, I felt like in confidence, and I felt I had to honor that confidence.
With regard to the manual that was existing in October 1996, what was the requirement for an officer to see the fellow officer commit a crime? Did you know that, what that was?
Yes.
And what was it?
Supervisor.
And who was Detective Stiger's supervisor in October 1996?
Goddamn.
Well, did you make any determination about what to do after speaking with Detective Stiger?
I asked him if he wanted me to talk to Sergeant Cameron about the working situation.
And what was his response?
He said that would be fine with him, but that was really all we would do on the job was not to have to work for Sunny days anymore.
And did you do that?
I tried. I called, after our conversation was over, I went back to my office and I called Sergeant Cameron's desk phone. And unfortunately he wasn't in, and I had to leave a message for him. He called me back later. I think we traded messages one time, and then I finally spoke to him on the phone. And I told him that I had spoken to Floyd about this situation with the money and Sunny Davis. And his response to me was, oh, you heard about that? And I said yes. And if I heard about it, there's got to be a whole bunch of people that have heard about it. And I still at that point didn't even know when it happened. I was of the opinion that it was a week or two in the past.
When you actually spoke with Detective Stiger, you didn't ask him what exactly he was doing?
No.
And did he indicate to you he would take any sort of action?
I told him that I felt he was being unfair to Detective Stiger. That working relationship was not fair, was not right. And he insisted to me very strongly that he would take care of it.
Was it all
On the phone.
What did you do then?
I called Detective Stiger and said, I talked to Sergeant Cameron. I don't expect you to have to pay any price for this. I want you to let me know if anything is said or done regarding you or about you regarding this. And then I waited a few days. And I think our weekend may have passed. Then I called Detective Stiger back on the telephone to find out what had happened, if anything had taken place.
And what did he tell you?
Said there was absolutely no mention of my phone call. The working situation was still the same, and it was just as though it had never happened.
And what did you do then?
Then I went to see Sergeant Cameron in person. I just walked into the office and asked him to come with me into a little interview room, and I talked to him.
And what did you tell him?
I told him that I thought it was completely unfair and unprofessional for him to leave it that way, that he had put Detective Stiger in an unfair position, And then I launched into kind of a sermon, I guess, about Sergeant Cameron's reputation and how this is going to come to light and that it will destroy his reputation, but it doesn't have to be that way, that he could do something positive and repair his own reputation by providing leadership.
And what was his response?
That he take care.
Have you ever heard that response from Sergeant Cameron in the past against other matters?
Yes.
And what did it mean?
I don't want to talk about it anymore.
So after hearing that response from the second time from Sergeant Cameron, did you take any action?
I didn't really do anything. So I went back to my office and I discussed in general terms with Captain Lindstrand and Lieutenant Reed what I had learned and what I had done, and really in general terms.
When you say general, did you talk to them about the fact that there was a man found at the crime scene and taken?
No.
And was there a reason that you didn't inform them about the other matter?
I really felt that I owed it to Don Cameron to try and do the right thing and resolve this problem himself or somebody that worked under his command. I knew that the implication of what would happen were it to be handled in the official manner. So I chose to do it the way I did.
Okay. And what happened then?
I know that in a very few days, some days and folks started no longer working together.
Did you have any other contact with Sergeant Cameron or Detective Davis about, or even Detective Stiger about these issues?
I think a few months later, I was in the office in the homicide office for some reason. There was an old case that I had some involvement in that was going to trial, and I was there doing some work, and Clerk Stiger was there, and he showed me, I think, a copy of the evidence sheet that showed the $10,000 being entered, and the follow-up that was prepared to support that entry into the evidence section. But that's all.
Based on your extensive experience in the homicide unit and the training, when a search is being conducted and detectives come upon a container with numerous papers in them, what's the standard routine for handling that? Is the entire container searched for all the papers it's there, or?
Well, it would almost be a case-by-case basis, but in some circumstances, the entire case would be emptied out, and page by page, the papers gone through. Some of them kept, some of them not. Photographs taken, that sort of thing. If valuables were there, an inventory of the valuables, that's very standard.
Specifically, if money is found at a crime scene, what are the procedures and requirements?
The requirements are that we take the money. If we're in charge of that scene, we being the police department, take the money. There's a very specific step-by-step accounting method that's in place where we review picking up the money is taken to the evidence section where it's counted in front of the warehouse person that's going to actually receive it. It's sealed in an envelope and then sealed inside of another envelope. Signatures are affixed to the seals. It's a pretty detailed procedure to safeguard the money.
And to safeguard the police department as well, I guess.
Correct.
With regard to returning to a previously searched crime scene for purposes of obtaining some documentation, would it be, in your opinion, necessary to take two cameras?
No, not. If you're going back to pick up some papers, if you're going back to establish somebody's identity, there'd be no reason to take cameras.
For purposes of returning to a previously processed crime scene to accommodate repair work and pick up some documentation, would it be normal for a supervisor to do that kind of work?
It wouldn't be normal. But as I stated earlier, it would be, I have done that with this particular individual where there was nobody else available. He has accompanied me on such mundane things as interviewing a witness or things like that, and even to the more hands-on approach to leading an arrest and that sort of thing, where it would be, in some people's view, not a normal thing to do. But in terms of going back to a scene that was already processed and then turned over to a different squad, I think it would be different. It would be unusual, very unusual.
And was that the circumstances in this case?
That's what I've been recommending.
And the squad that had been turned over to was Cynthia Tallman's squad.
Right.
And thus it was then the first squad's responsibility.
Yes.
Whose responsibility? Whose responsibility once the case is turned over to the squad? Whose responsibility is it then to do the follow-up for that case?
That squad was turned over to, and specifically the case detectives that have that responsibility.
You indicated that you did observe Detective Davis's habits. Did you have ample opportunity to observe his habits as he dealt with money, for example, or used cash, checks, or credit cards?
The times that I was with him where money was used to purchase food or drink, my recollection was he used cash.
Very good. Give me a second. You had indicated before that there are rules governing money found at a crime scene, and that there was a requirement that the officers follow those rules and take it into possession for protection purposes for the money and for the protection of the South Police Department. Is there a time frame? Can you keep the money for a long period of time, or are you supposed to turn it in at the end of shift? What is the requirement?
I can't picture the exact wording in the manual, but I would imagine that it says
To the responsiveness of the answer.
Rather than imagining, do you have any sort of recollection of what the manual says about?
as soon as possible. And that would be by the end of the shift, including working beyond the shift to handle it properly.
So, with regard to the appropriateness of taking money home with you, keeping it for any period of time, what does the manual say about how appropriate that would be?
That's inappropriate.
Give me a second. One last question. I'm not sure I articulated my question well enough before, but if you, as a detective with 14 years experience, were processing the crime scene, looking specifically for documentation, you came upon a cabinet with papers and folded matter, packaged matter in it, what would you do as part of your duties in regard to that cabinet?
I would begin looking through the papers to see if I can find whatever the documents were that I was seeking. And it would certainly just depend upon what it was I was looking for.
What if in general you're looking for documents, or more than one, not a specific document, a certain category of documents? Would you look through the entire cabinet or not?
If I was seeking specific documents, I probably wouldn't need to look through the whole thing. I would probably be able to find what I was seeking in say, a file of personal papers as opposed to looking at every But some things were found, and measurements were taken, and then the scene was secured and they left.
And do you understand that they went back the next day to look for bullets, take more photographs, take more measurements?
I'm not aware of what they may have done.
Detective Stiger called you when? And leading up to this meeting in the coffee shop at the next door?
I think it was in late May or early June of 97.
And you have a way of fixing that date?
Well, I had and maintained at that time the stenopad telephone calls that have regular dates entered into it, and I found the case in which Don Cameron returned a telephone call to him and left a message for him. And it's my recollection that that's when I made contact with him, and that was the very same day that I spoke with Coach Stiger.
And this page has a date on it?
Yes.
Now, at the time Detective Stiger told you this, you were a sergeant with IIS.
Yes, it was.
And what does the manual say about your obligation as a member of IIS and the rest of the IIS?
The manual probably doesn't give me much in the way of alternative, but to act officially and take official action.
And you didn't?
No, sir.
Okay. And you went and discussed this matter with Captain Wingstrand and Lieutenant Lee?
I believe the affair of state.
But you did not brief them on Floyd Stiger's allegations of theft?
Correct.
When you say that you had no choice, and you could not make Floyd Stiger report this, did you tell Mr. Stiger that if you don't do it, I will?
No, I didn't say that.
Did you say anything like it?
I expressed in my feeling that this was a very serious matter and you should report it.
Well then, if it was a serious matter and should be reported, why didn't you do it?
I felt that it was more appropriate for Don Cameron to do the reporting and to handle the personnel matter in his squad.
But then it became obvious to you that Don Cameron didn't.
Correct.
Well then at that point, why didn't you report it?
I still felt that at some point Don Cameron would see the light, naive that I might have been, that Don Cameron would realize that it wasn't going to go away, that it was going to be a black mark in his record when it was discovered.
Well, this matter first came to the attention of the general public in March of '99.
I believe so.
Are you saying that you waited from the summer of '97 to March of '99 waiting for Cameron to see the light?
Yes.
By the time that this came to the attention of the public, do you know whether or not Mr. Davis, my client, had announced this time his plan to retire?
I believe that I knew he was going to retire around the very same day that I was retiring.
Do you did you have any knowledge that Sergeant Cameron had announced his plans to retire?
He had previously announced another day, and then he hadn't been postponed, and I didn't know when Sergeant Cameron's retirement day was going to be.
Did you expect him to see the light, as you put it, before or after he retired?
I didn't know.
Had you reported the matter, or had you told Captain Greenspan and Lieutenant Reed about the theft, that would have started an official investigation, would it not?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember, to the best of your memory, how long after this conversation in the coffee room was it that you were over at the homicide office and Detective Stiger showed you these documents?
I think a few months. Quite a long time.
Well, you have no notes or memorandum regarding that.
No, but I'm trying to line it up with the purpose for which I was over there, and I kind of recall the dates of that.
And when you say a few months, assuming that the coffee room conversation occurred in May or June or July of '97, when would you say the episode of Detective Stiger and this displaying of documents to you occurred?
Probably fall, October, November, but I can't be certain.
And what did Detective Stiger show?
A photocopy of an evidence sheet that indicated $10,000 had been placed in evidence, and a photocopy of the follow-up report that had been written by Sonny Davis and signed by Sergeant Cameron.
All right, now, were these out of the regular file?
Well, they're photocopies, so I don't know. He had them. I don't know whether they were out of the regular file.
So did he have the regular file there to show you where the file was singular, or did he just have two documents?
I was over there for some other reason. He went and documents things from wherever he got them, someplace in the homicide working area.
Did you and Detective Stiger discuss in detail what he saw Detective Davis do that led him to believe he was taking money?
Well, detail, yes.
Well, did Detective Stiger tell you what Detective Davis did with the money?
I'm sure he did, but I don't recall exactly what he said.
Did he tell you where he thinks Detective Davis got the money from?
From a cabinet that was a sewing machine in the room where this man had lived.
Did Detective Stiger tell you that he saw denominations in the money?
No.
Did he describe the size of the roll of the wad of money?
I think that initially he told me it was $10,000, and I asked him if he could count it. He said no, it was just a large amount of money, and that the only way he knew for sure was from the evidence sheet that had later been prepared.
All right, but back to your discussion, did he describe how big the wad was? And it's big too.
No, he didn't give us specific information.
Well, wouldn't it be fair to say that he told you it was $10,000 because that was the amount of money
that's exactly what he told me, because I asked him if he counted it. And he said, no, that's all I know is that's what was turned in.
If I could have just a second. When you called Sergeant Cameron, I understand the first call was the same day that Mr. Stiger talked with you in the coffee shop.
Yes.
And did you talk with Mr. Cameron that day?
Yes.
Was that in person or on the telephone?
On the telephone.
Would it be fair to say that if you're investigating a scene, such as a police shooting, it's a little bit different than investigating an ordinary homicide?
Well, the difference may be just internal. I think in theory everything is supposed to be treated the same, but it is correct in practice, a scene where a co-worker, fellow employee was involved in a very serious matter like shooting somebody, taking somebody's life, that's treated more seriously than some unknown offender shooting somebody.
Right. But at least in the scene where there's a police shooting, you know who did it.
Yes.
It's not a question of who done it. We've got to find him.
Correct. The question is to determine circumstances and verify what is reported to you or refute what is reported to you about it.
That's all.
Follow up on the last question. It's important to be thorough. For what reason?
Well, in every police shooting there's going to be a review, a number of reviews, internal reviews. In the case of a death, there's going to be an inquest, whereas in other cases, it may not get solved, it may not be in review, there may not other than the internal record keeping of the investigation. But also the fact that there's somebody that you know and work around that is relying on you to do a thorough investigation because their career, their freedom hangs in the balance.
Nothing further.
This concludes the deposition. The time is now 3:21 p.m. and this